Hello, this is Dr. Fluffy. Today we are going to watch some of these gender non-binary defenders in action to see how well they do and what are their great arguments. I'm not going to play the entire Jordan Peterson debate, but I'm going to select some parts that I think are more important, and I'm going to leave the rest of the video in the description because it's too big.
Joining us now to better understand the issue and debate what's at stake. In Vancouver, British Columbia, Theron Meyer, transgender pundit and YouTuber. In the nation's capital, Kyle Kirkup, professor of law at the University of Ottawa. And here in studio, the aforementioned Jordan Peterson, professor of psychology, University of Toronto, Nicholas Matt, lecturer, transgender studies at U of T, and Mary Rogan, whose article entitled Growing Up Trans is featured in the October issue of the Walrus magazine.
So except for Jordan Peterson, nobody in the panel has any qualifications to actually debate the issue at hand. They can debate the emotional side of the issue, but they cannot debate the scientific issue here. And one of the problems of the law that they are debating is that it stops the scientific discussion on the issue, even though the scientific discussion is completely against the law. So do you expect any explanation from the SJW side on why gender is not binary? Explanation. And let's first look at some of the protesters that went against Jordan Peterson's stance on free speech.
Online that you would like people to be more accommodating of trans people and people of color at your events in future.
So this girl immediately goes on a dishonest tirade during this protest. She implies transgender people and people of color are not being accommodated or being well treated by Jordan Peterson and his followers. This leaves the impression that people are being discriminated against, but they are not. The people protesting just don't want to use names that are not real and be forced to accept genders that are also not real. This should be simple. And of course, if you spend a bit researching what happened in this protest, you actually see that the violence came from these non-binary, transgender activists against the rest of the protesters.
I'm a person of color. I'm a person of color, and I felt very accommodated.
And did you notice how they tried to immediately put racism in there? Even though the issue has nothing to do with race, they immediately tried to push racism into the subject, but the only actual person of color immedially said, no, I'm really comfortable here.
Been multiple recorded instances of trans people killing themselves because they are not being integrated into society.
Now this is an appeal to emotion. These people want to make you feel bad and therefore surrender your rights. They are again using people with gender dysphoria, true transsexual people, to make you feel bad and surrender your rights to them. Because these non-binary people do not have any condition. They are not victims of anything. They are victims of their own delusions. And you should not be able to surrender yourself to their delusions. They are not victims. They are not special.
If it wasn't for this law, and I asked you to refer to me with they, them pronouns, would you?
Why do you have the authority to determine whether or not an individual is worthy of you using their pronoun?
I'm sorry, but you're not you're not special to force people to use pronouns that are not real. I will not deny reality to accommodate your feelings. Period.
I don't care!
And why don't we do this? Let's take a moment. We're going to explain a few basic things here. The issue of so-called non-traditional pronouns goes together with non-traditional gender identities. New York City, for example, recognizes 31 such gender expressions. In other words, besides man and woman, there are 29 other gender expressions. For example, pangender, queer gender, gender fluid, cross-dresser, bigendered, gender blender, and the list goes on.
And of course, none of these things are genders. They don't have different chromosomes, they don't have different organs, they don't have anything that will create a different means of sexual reproduction. Therefore, they are not genders. What these things are either fashion choices or different personality traits that people conflate to gender. Why? Because if they create the idea that these things are genders, they can be part of a victim cult.
Trans studies. So, if you would, give us a brief primer on so many gender identities that, in your view, require non-traditional pronouns.
Okay, let's start by the obvious. What the hell is a teacher of transgender studies? There's only two things to study about transgender issues: is how to diagnose gender dysphoria and how to treat it. So this guy has no qualifications to speak on the matter. He is not a biologist, he's not a psychiatrist, he's not a medical doctor. He does not have any qualifications to speak on this matter.
Basically, it's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex.
What? You gotta be kidding me. Somebody who says something so ridiculously stupid should be immediately fired. I mean it. No, you cannot have somebody like this teaching young people. Without biological sex, you wouldn't be here, moron. Biological sex is how we reproduce. We have a female and a male, and you have two sexual different cells that need to combine to produce a fucking embryo so the person can be born. Without biological sex, there is no reproduction.
And I'm a historian of medicine. I can unpack that for you at great length if you want, but in the interest of time, I won't. So,
Oh, you won't. Maybe it's because you're full of shit and it's a lie, but you're counting that people who already think like yourself will say, oh, of course, he's a historical of medicine. He's not a medic, but he's a historian. Historian. Like that counts a lot. Historian of medicine. Bullshit.
Give us some of the other pronouns that one would hear, typically.
I don't focus on pronouns because pronouns are actually part of a cisnormative culture. So what we do is learn about...
Well, I'm going to stop you right there.
Yes, I was just about to explain.
Good.
So we don't start from a cisnormative perspective because that can't actually go very far.
What does cisnormative mean?
So I'm going to start us there. Cisnormative is basically the very popular idea and assumption that most people probably have, and definitely that our structures convey, that there is such a thing as male and female.
You mean reality. It's not a culture, it's biology. You have XX chromosomes and you have a female. You have XY chromosomes, you have a male. 0.018% of people are either male or females that have a genetic defect that causes an extra chromosome or a defect in the chromosome that makes the organs ambiguous. But the sex and the gender is not ambiguous. The organs are just defective. For fuck's sake, man.
They connect to being a girl or a boy or a man or a woman. And then sometimes that will also recognize intersex or trans people or transsexual people, as you mentioned, because that's sometimes also referred to as a gender binary. So anything that fits within a gender binary can work within cisnormativity.
Okay.
But cisnormativity is basically that everyone assumes that there is male and female, and so very little is actually looked at to understand what's actually the case. And scientists have been doing this for
Because
at
your
least
view
over
would be
50 years.
your view would be it's much more complicated than that.
People don't assume anything. The chromosomes are XX and XY. It's male and female. They reproduce and they produce offspring that is either male or female. That binary variation of chromosomes produces a binary variation of sexual organs that correspond to 99.98% of the human population. That's a gender binary, period.
Could I speak to the campus climate about this? Because
Go
I
ahead.
don't agree with why Dr. Peterson has been asked to stop abusing students on campus.
So, Professor Potato Head here decided to conflate not wanting to accept dishonest lies and delusions with abuse. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, for example, considering that evolution is correct and creationism is wrong is abuse. I didn't know that believing that the earth was round instead of flat was abuse. I didn't know that believing that gravity was a thing and telling students not to jump up off windows was abuse. I didn't know that reality and biology were abuse. But apparently Potato Head tells me it's abuse.
Would you like to know more?
To stop doing what?
Abusing students
I see.
and other members of our learning community who do deserve respect.
I am sorry to tell you, but respect is something that you earn. It's not something that you deserve. It's not something that is automatically given to you just because you're a person. There are ideas that should never be respected. Like blowing a bunch of people up will get you to paradise should not be respected. That a race is superior to another should not be respected. That biological sex and gender are not binary should not be respected. Never. Denying scientific facts should not be respected.
Do deserve to be able to work and learn and contribute to society in a place where if they are physically assaulted, if they are
The assault so far came from the social justice warriors who are at this free speech rally, and almost 2 million people have
This
watched
is not
those
accurate.
so far.
You know there's a thing called YouTube. And with YouTube people can see that you're lying, right, Potato Head? Right? Right?
Right?
So, leaving Mr. Potato Head for a bit, and let's look at something really spot on that Jordan Peterson said.
It's not a transsexual cabal by any stretch of the imagination. Is it a cabal of radical left-wingers? Yes, it's a cabal of radical left-wingers, and they've been active behind and in front of the scenes increasingly over the last 30 years. And my estimation is that departments like Women's Studies have trained between 300,000 and 3 million radical left-wing activists, and they're making...
And they're all underpaid, so don't worry.
They shouldn't be paid at all.
Well, they could pick higher paying occupations if they wanted higher paying occupations. But
because sexism does not exist. Are you kidding me?
Let's not get off topic here, folks.
Oh, who would have guessed that Mr. Potato Head was also a feminist?
That about situations, people are being assaulted. I brought all sorts of really depressing stats that...
Conveniently, you're not going to show.
But
Give us
many
one.
people...
Give us one stat.
Yeah, so 58% of students could not get academic transcripts with their correct name or pronoun.
Well, quick and simple solution. Stop living in a fantasy world and accept that just two genders, male and female, and all the rest are just your personality traits that have nothing to do with your gender. Simple. Solved.
This tweet to you, and I'll get you to respond to it because I think it's instructive of the conversation that just took place between the two of you. Can someone please explain to Jordan B. Peterson that there's a difference between freedom of speech and freedom from consequence?
Well, this is projection. They are the ones that are running away from the consequences of choosing to deny biological reality. So in order to protect their fantasy, they want to take freedom of speech away from other people. So when they leave their safe spaces and enter into society, they can remain protected from, well, reality. These people have no connection to real transsexual people or to intersex people. They are just professional victims that apparently can even accept that your personality and your gender are completely independent things. These ideologues that ferment this mentality should be fired from universities. They should lose their jobs. They aren't teachers, they're preachers. They are people with a political agenda trying to radicalize students. If we want an educated generation, we need to take these people out of universities. Don't forget to comment, leave a like, tell me what you think, subscribe, and help share. It really helps out. Check out my other videos. Until next time, stay fluffy.